We talked already about how the world around us is changing very quickly and how this impacts literally everything we know and everything we are so much accustomed to, including many things that are literally lifetime habits and that we never considered would ever change. We are literally transitioning from one era for mankind into an entirely new one. The essence of what we are experiencing is that we are moving into a world where we increasingly more face environments and circumstances with infinite options, where it is very hard for us to define in very exact, unambiguous, conclusive terms what it is that we exactly want to achieve as an outcome. The desired outcome is elusive, and due to the ever faster evolutionary cycles, that already elusive outcome very likely even still will be evolving while we are working our way towards it. In this kind of environment, it is also very hard, if not to say impossible, to anticipate how much effort it will take us to get there and what kind of obstacles we will have to overcome. And that's simply the nature of it. We cannot change that. We can only learn to be efficient and successful in that specific type of context. But that requires a major shift in mindset, tools, ways of working, and many more things, and effectively changing a lot of lifetime habits. To illustrate this a little bit further, a typical environment that most of us are used to would be very much comparable to go to market to buy a new car, or to design and build a new building, or to deploy a previous generation video headend or playout facility. We typically knew what the finite options were. We could rely on past experiences, and we had therefore the ability to translate our objectives into detailed requirements. And those could then be leveraged to make buying decisions, or to hand over those requirements to an implementation team, and to simply check compliance at the end to verify those deliverables. And that's the process that we all know and are very much accustomed to. An example of what you have increasingly more in this new emerging world would be to go to market, to select and integrate a new enabling software platform combined with some cloud services to implement some new innovative content workflows that will enable us to increase our operational efficiency or to deliver our new media services. And very important, which allows us also to evolve those workflows easily to deal with the continuous evolutions that will inevitably follow in the near future, or which could even happen while we are working on this implementation. And this is a completely different animal as compared to what I described first. Much more elusive, much more complex, much more case-specific and personal, and many other things. And as we already pointed out previously, in that new type of more elusive and less tangible context, the key to success is agility, the ability to move ahead in short iterations, to continuously re-evaluate our position and options, and to aim at delivering maximum value with each new iteration moving forward. Agile is simply hands down the most efficient way to deliver maximum value towards your goals within that type of environment and within a given time frame with a finite number of resources. But being truly agile is about a lot more than what most people realize, and it takes a considerable effort and attention to details to become agile. And one of them is definitely how you use and leverage requirements, for example. People and organizations have a long history and habit of setting goals and objectives and to subsequently translate those rather very quickly, almost instantly, and without too much reflection into very detailed requirements. And if needed, to select technology and make decisions based on those requirements. And then to appoint a team to implement the solution based on those predefined requirements. And quite commonly, the people that write the requirements are not even the people that subsequently do the implementation. And also, here's a key thing. To then evaluate the success of the project at the end based on the level of compliance with each and any of those very specific and very detailed requirements that were defined ahead of the project. It may sound trivial what I'm saying, but again, that's because we are so used to that. And what else can we say about requirements? Firstly, people specify requirements based on their own personal past experiences, their own habits and preferences, the existing operational procedures and workflows, and much more like that. Secondly, Requirements are based on what people knew and the information at hand at that specific point in time. And while all of this works very well in a universe with a limited number of well-defined and well-known options, this does not go very well in a universe with infinite options, and where it is impossible to describe your most optimal solution in very definitive and unambiguous terms. Even more, not only does it no longer work, applying those old habits can actually be very detrimental towards the outcome in that new context. It is effectively a harsh day-to-day reality that while an initiative in this infinite space may be very successful in terms of compliance with the initial requirements that were defined, that same initiative factually will not live up to the goals that were initially defined. So apparently something can easily go wrong these days in the entire journey from goal setting towards accomplishing those goals. And it should not come as a surprise if you compare what I just explained about the nature of requirements and the way we used to use them with the nature of what we are effectively increasingly more dealing with in this new world of software, ICT systems and cloud services. A world with infinite options and massive untapped potential. But we will kick it off by potentially anchoring it down with requirements based on our very limited personal framework of past experiences and habits and all of that? Really? A world where our goals are rather elusive and even continuously evolving, but we are pretentious enough to say that we know exactly what is needed even before we get started, and that we can capture it with requirements in a way that we can unambiguously define everything so that it can be handed over to a team to simply implement it? Really? A world with a lot of unexpected obstacles ahead of us, but we will unconditionally commit ourselves to details, irrespective whether that might then potentially result in burning massive amounts of time and resources to achieve that one specific detail, a detail that might even turn out not to be that important and valuable in light of the actual goals. Really? Ultimately, it boils down to something very simple. We have goals and ambitions that we want to achieve. And we want to generate maximum value for our investment of time and money and resources. In a context of finite options, value can be very much defined, maximized, and controlled by well-thought and carefully crafted requirements compiled ahead of the implementation. And all you had to do is simply to ensure compliance with those at the end, without the need to even be involved during the actual implementation. Value was controlled with requirements. But those days are over now for a lot of activities and endeavors in the new world. The new world is increasingly more comparable to performing art. The options are infinite. You can create endless different versions of music, sculptures, dance performances, and paintings. And you would never think of commissioning a piece of art based on extensive, predefined requirements, and then have the illusion that you can hand it over to just any artist to implement it for you, and that you would be able to evaluate the success based on compliance with your predefined requirements without being involved at all during the creation process. In the new world, you create, you shape, you evaluate, you sense, you evolve, you improve, and you aim at growing towards the best possible result, like the way you shape art. And that's what agility is all about. And hence, value can no longer be controlled by requirements, but instead, it is actually generated in the first place during the creation process itself. Firstly, simply stop doing what you always did. If you just spent a little bit of time comparing how you used requirements in the past with the nature of the evolutions that you see all around you, it really doesn't take very long to see that these are like oil and water. They don't go together very well. So the first thing to do is to ensure that you do not continue doing what you always did, and that everybody involved is very conscious about that. Because even the smallest residuals of these existing habits can be extremely detrimental. Often you will see, for example, teams that are getting quite advanced in working agile, but they fail to reach the full benefit because of remnants of those old habits in their surroundings. Typical culprits are then usually non-technical teams, a procurement team that still heavily and almost exclusively leans on requirements to make buying decisions. A contracting team that still leverages compliance with requirements for contract fulfillment. Believing that you can manage and optimize value through requirements is an illusion. And in fact, it can be very detrimental and result in a major loss of opportunity to generate value. Secondly, make your goals take the center stage instead of requirements. As mentioned in the past, everybody jumped from goals to requirements very quickly. And often that was done by a select number of people. Now you have to spend way more time on clearly describing your actual goals in the first place. What is it that you ultimately and factually want to achieve? Not how, but what. Make it as tangible as possible and even measurable. It is not easy, but just try and learn to do that. And then also ensure that those goals are very well understood by all possible involved parties and stakeholders across your entire organization, including even external parties such as contractors, system integrators, and technology vendors, if any. And ensure that those goals will take the center stage continuously all the way through every single step of the process, including the implementation and creation, until the actual goals are effectively achieved. Thirdly, limit your requirements to the absolute minimum. More is less. And I'm not claiming here that there no longer should be any requirements at all, but limit them to the absolute, unambiguous must-haves. Your OTT app needs to run on both Android and iOS. That's clear, so that's acceptable. But refrain from venturing into more ambiguous details. And note that this is probably the exact opposite of the existing habits in your organization, where it is typically all about the more the merrier. The mindset of the more we ask, the more detailed we are, the more value and guarantee that we will get for our money. While in fact in the new world, the more specific and conclusive you are, the more damage you can potentially do and the more opportunity you may lose to generate actual value. The focus has to be on creating value towards the goals, not requirements that were imagined by somebody ahead of the project. And fourthly, last but not least, as a stakeholder, shift your available resources and energy from defining requirements ahead of the project to being heavily involved in the actual implementation and creation of the project. The timeline of an activity and the resources working on it are always finite. But the actual value that can be delivered within those boundaries can be considerably boosted by the diligent involvement of the stakeholder. Whereas in the past, a user was somebody who would specify before the implementation and accept after the implementation without being really too involved during the actual implementation, the user is now an indispensable member of the actual creation team and a key contributor to the value that can be delivered. The better the user understands that and is proficient in working with the creation team, the more value that will effectively be delivered. Agility is one of the most essential cornerstones for any successful digital transformation, but it is effectively a considerable and very multifaceted challenge, and it truly affects everything you can think of, including many things that are literally lifetime habits. And those are the most challenging changes that can easily be overlooked and the trickiest ones to effectively tackle. And the way goals and requirements are being used is a great example of that. It's so easy to overlook, while it is effectively a very important piece of the puzzle. It's a change that is not to be underestimated and which can have a big impact if it is not addressed properly. Carefully consider these very important details. Scrutinize your entire organization on how everybody works and behaves in respect to goals and requirements, and I'm confident it will put you right into the fast lane towards success in this new emerging data-driven era.